So today, let's talk about a man who didn't start a religion, he didn't command any armies, but his ideas ended up shaping the lives of billions of people for more than 2,000 years. This is the story of Confucius.
I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture your world just falling apart. War is everywhere, nobody trusts anyone, and all the old rules just don't seem to matter anymore. Where would you even start to fix it? This is the exact problem that kept Confucius up at night.
And the thing is, he wasn't a king or some great general. He was a thinker, a teacher, and a pretty minor government official named Confucius. And his answer? It wasn't about power or military might. It was about people.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to see just how chaotic his world really was. Then, we'll get into his big plan, which all starts with personal virtue and builds up to a whole new way to structure society. And finally, we'll see how that idea created a legacy that's still with us today.
So first things first, we've got to understand the problem Confucius was trying to solve. And to do that, we need to travel back in time to the spring and autumn period of ancient China.
And trust me, this was a time of absolute turmoil. The central government had basically collapsed, leaving all these different states to just fight it out for power. You had constant warfare. Society was unraveling. The old values of honor and duty, pretty much thrown out the window. It was, simply put, a full-blown moral crisis.
And right into the middle of all this chaos steps our guy. But he doesn't show up as some prophet with visions from the gods. No, he's a super practical scholar with a clear, down-to-earth plan to put society back together. And this right here, this is his big idea. Confucius argued that you don't build a strong, peaceful country with armies and walls. You build it from the inside out, one person at a time. The huge society-wide problem had a surprisingly small solution: yourself. Okay, so how do you actually do that? How does one person become virtuous? Well, Confucius lays out a really clear path, and it's all built on two key ideas that are totally intertwined. First up, we have Ren. The easiest way to think about this is like your inner moral compass. It's that deep down feeling of goodness, of empathy, of just basic humanness towards other people. For Confucius, this was basically the source code for all good behavior. And this famous saying, you've probably heard some version of it, totally nails how Ren works in the real world. It's the original golden rule, right? Before you do something, you check in with that inner empathy. How would this make someone else feel? And hey, how would I feel if someone did this to me?
But here's the thing. Just feeling the right way isn't enough. That feeling has to show up in your actions, and that's where Li comes in. Li is all the rituals, the manners, the proper way of doing things in society. It's the roadmap for how you actually show respect and act honorably.
And this is where it all comes together. This is the magic. You need both. Ren is your why, that inner feeling of compassion. Li is the how, the right way to put that feeling into action. You see, Ren without Li, that's just a nice thought that goes nowhere. And Li without Ren, well, that's just being a robot. You're just going through the motions with no heart behind it. Real virtue is when your inner goodness powers your outer actions perfectly.
Okay, so if we've got all these individuals working on themselves, getting their inner Ren and their outer Li in sync, how does that fix an entire society? This is where Confucius goes from psychologist to social architect.
His idea was actually pretty brilliant in its simplicity. The state is just one giant family. And just like a healthy family works because everyone has a role and certain responsibilities, a healthy society should work exactly the same way. Harmony isn't an accident. It comes from everyone knowing their part and playing it well.
And he didn't just leave it as a metaphor. He literally mapped it out with these 5 key relationships. He believed these 5 pairings were the fundamental building blocks of all human interaction. And you'll notice something pretty quick. 4 out of the 5 are hierarchical. That structure was no accident. For Confucius, it was the key to stability.
Now, it's super important to get this right. This wasn't about blind obedience. It was a two-way street. The ruler has a duty to be good and fair to their subjects. The father has to be kind and provide for his son. In return, the subject is loyal and the son is respectful. It's this web of mutual responsibility. And his thinking was, if every family gets this right, then the entire country will be stable and harmonious.
So the big question, did it work? Well, in his own lifetime? Honestly, not so much. The wars dragged on. But the long-term impact? Wow, that is a completely different story. It is almost impossible to overstate how influential his ideas became. His simple plan for a good person and a good society became the operating system for a huge part of the world. It shaped government, laws, family life, even just basic everyday manners, not just in China, but in places like Korea, Japan, and Vietnam too.
And as you can see here, this wasn't some overnight sensation. It took centuries. But during the Han Dynasty, his philosophy was officially adopted by the state. And here's the really brilliant move. They made his teachings the basis for the civil service exams. Think about that. If you wanted a job in the government, you had to become an expert in Confucianism. This made sure that generations of leaders were totally immersed in his ideas about morality and duty.
And that, really, brings us all the way back to today. Confucius answered the question of his chaotic time with a clear map focused on roles, responsibility, and a shared sense of morality. But it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In our world, a world that's so focused on individualism and is connected in ways he could never have imagined, what does our map for a harmonious society look like?